Welcome to the Animal Aspirations podcast. In today's episode, we speak to two trailblazing new grads who are taking social media by storm. They talk about their time studying in Eastern Europe and the lessons they learned from being a student abroad. Then we take the jump from being a student to a new grad and what their first job was like. With a social media presence, they discuss why they wanted to share both their personal and professional lives to showcase being real and relatable role models. This is a slightly longer episode, but the chemistry between these two guests is so amazing that I know you'll be hooked from the start. So let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. Technically it's afternoon for us. Would you mind introducing yourselves, please?
Hi, I'm Dr.Bolu SO. Currently a sole charge veterinarian in the UK, new graduate. I've been in practice 2.5 years now, and I'm just here to give my insight into my life, I guess.
Lovely, thank you.
And my name's Fabian Rivers. I'm an exotics vet in Birmingham. I've been practicing for 3 years. And yeah, same with Bolu, really, just happy to have a nice chat with you guys.
Lovely. Okay, so the first thing I want to ask you is, obviously, because you've only been in practice for 3 years, but let's go back to your student days. What was it like being a student? Where did you study? Like, what did you enjoy about it?
Both of us? One of us? I can go. Yeah, I can go. I mean, yeah, it's amazing, I think. it's a lot to process at once. It's weird because you say 3 years and it feels like a short time in the grand scheme of things, like when you hear people who've been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years. But that 3 years feels like, you know how people equate like 3 human years to dog years? It feels like a lifetime. University feels like a lifetime away. It honestly feels like a whole nother world. I was talking to one of my colleagues that I was with in Budapest, because I studied in Budapest. I was talking with one of my colleagues that I was in Budapest with, and it just seems like it was ages since we've been there, because you just get hit with so much in the real world. As soon as the real world hits you, it's just like boom, 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 one thing after the next. And obviously you have all these goals that you're trying to hit as well. And so it's like the hedonic treadmill of just next goal, next goal, next goal, next goal, boom, boom, boom. And so the 3 years kind of feels like 10 years. I feel like I'm aging like really quickly. I'm in like a hyperbolic chamber and just aging really quickly and, you know, experiencing so many cases. So, I mean, I don't know how it is for you, Fabian, but.
Yeah, I mean, I studied 6 years in the Czech Republic, and during my time there, it felt like it was never ending. Every year I was doing different courses, but it felt like a whole lifetime was there. And so many of the dynamics in the Czech Republic changed, and the city landscape and the politics, and so much happened. And then, just like Bolu said, you come back, and I mean, I went back home initially, and the first thing I had was going back home and living with my mom initially, and realizing so much had changed and so little had changed in such in that time gap that I'd been out in the Czech Republic. And 3 years down the line, it feels like a whole new life. And I've been back to the Czech Republic twice now, to see friends and so on and so forth. And it just doesn't feel, it feels familiar, but it feels like a different planet entirely. You go back and you meet the same people and they've progressed or are just about to graduate, and it just, I lived here for 6 years. Like I wasn't just here, I lived here for 6 years, and it doesn't feel real at all.
Yeah, it's the same with me in Hungary, because that's Hungary, and Hungary will always, I'm sure it's probably the same with you, it depends on your experience, I guess, but Hungary is always going to be like a big part of me. Like part of me wants to say that I'm Hungarian. I'll go out there and I wear my Hungarian badge with honor, like, you know, I'm part Hungarian as well as I am British, because, you know, I really had some of the best time of my life in that 6 years that I was there. And like I said, it felt like its own age, like it felt its own time, just being there for 6 years and then coming back to the UK and now experiencing life as a fully fledged doctor, and, you know, working on that goal that you were trying to achieve in Hungary. And, you know, it's so nice to experience, I think.
It was interesting. I mean I'm not sure how much this is relevant, but going out there originally was, I remember when I first decided I was going to go out to the Czech Republic, and people's reaction was very mixed. Some people would be like, what do they eat out in the Czech Republic? Like it was, I don't know, like I was going to Mars, or do they only eat soup and potatoes? Because I'm sure when I was in Czechoslovakia, which is clearly not around anymore for a very long time, but when I went out to Czechoslovakia in the 80s, it was a Soviet country. What do you think? You know, what's the difference now? And a lot of people were like, wow, where's Czech Republic? Is that near? Is that near Greece? You know what I mean?
Is that South America? Where is that?
Where is that? And so, but when I went out there, it was clearly a place that was kind of in a certain transition, and it was kind of modernizing in many different ways. And so, I was a little bit trepid about the whole thing, but I've never done anything in a straight line. I'm sure Bolu is the same as well. So it was really, really nice to go out to see something different and have that new experience. And as Brno grew, I grew with it at the same time. And so coming out of it, I left behind a very different place. And I built some really, really great friendships and things like that. And it's just like any other uni experience in the sense that you have a whole mini lifetime which prepares you for things that you didn't expect, because it's the first time that you're really on your own. And I'm not sure, I mean, I used to come back very rarely. And so I was, doing the bills and the electric and all those extra things. And so you have like a mini experience of the life that you're hopefully planning to build when you came back. And it definitely did help me.
Yeah, before I was going to start jumping on from that and going into that the whole life experience out there, because I'm sure we probably have so many stories to talk about. But like now I feel like I'm asking you a question because I'm intrigued now. But it's like how did you what brought about your decision to go to Czech Republic? Like, how did that all work? How did you end up going out there? Like, what?
So it all started because, I mean, I go back even earlier. I always wanted to be a vet. There was nothing else from that. And so it's very, very cliche with me, small kid, likes animals, wants to spend time around them, wants to help fix them, all that good stuff. And then I came to A levels and I had the grades and I had weird work experience, but my work experience was very unconventional. So instead of having, weeks and weeks and weeks in the vets, because I had several not so great experiences in vets, I would be like, I worked with a vet in South Africa for 7 weeks, or I worked on a charity farm, or I worked in a charity yard and things like that. So I think I had like 25 weeks, but all very unconventional. I had a week in a slaughterhouse, which is where they have like a day or two. And so when it came to applying, I actually got an offer, but via doing an undergrad route. I can't say which uni it was. But my other three just said no, straight off the bat. No. And so I came to this point of either going via this undergrad route to going on to, if I got a 2-1, I would get onto this other course. And it was the year when the 3,000 to the 9,000 changed. And so I had all these different elements of, what are my options? And so basically I took a gap year to think about it. I kept that offer there about doing the undergrad and then doing the postgrad. And also remember, when you do a postgrad, except I think it's RVC and maybe another place, it's the full whack money. So basically they were giving me the opportunity to get onto their course as a postgrad for full dollar basically.
Whack, no discount.
No discount. And so basically, it came to the point where I realized that my route to everything so far to get to veterinary medicine was going to be unconventional. And I had a friend who was doing dentistry out of the Czech Republic in the same city, it was a different university. And I was just looking around at different options, whether I go to America, and there was one in the Caribbean, and then there was one in Exactly, and then I was looking at the ones in Canada and see if I could get a scholarship there. I was just keeping all the options open. There was one in Australia, and I thought, I don't really fancy traveling to Australia, thank you very much. And then this opportunity came up in Europe, so I started to look at Slovakia and Budapest and the Czech Republic. And I had a distant family member. My uncle's wife is Czech, and she's from that area. So I had a conversation with her, and then I think when you start to get a little bit of context about a place, it just the pieces start to come together. And then when I worked out that legally speaking, well, pre-Brexit, that I would be able to study, and then I found that I had a good exotics clinic. I just kind of was like, you've never done anything in a straight line. You've not been given opportunities to do things in a straight line. You've had to work like an absolute dog to get to this particular point. Why wouldn't you look for, it's veterinary medicine is veterinary medicine, you know, wherever you learn it. And so I went out there and kind of, that's how I got into it really. And that was it. How about you, Bolu?
Yeah, mine is, it's like similar in a way and then a little bit different as well. Like like you say, I've always wanted to be a vet. Like that was my goal, and I'm sure like for everybody that's always the goal, you know, want to be a vet. I saw Steve Irwin, I've seen Dr. Doolittle, you know, I've seen all these things. Yeah, I want to, the animals, I want to be there and in it. And so yeah, it was chasing that dream. And like from young, I remember like putting down the universities that I wanted to go to. And when I say young, I mean like year 4, year 5. I'd like kind of looked at the universities and like the requirements. And I remember, because I remember looking at the university requirements, like, oh, okay, they need experience here and here. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. I don't know when, but we're going to do it. And so that was like the younger me. This is like a 9, 10-year-old me. And so all of my life was kind of geared towards that whole veterinary medicine spiel, like, you know, so the work experience, the extracurricular activities, you know, taking science GCSEs instead of taking the arts to GCSEs, that sort of thing. So a lot of it was kind of geared in that direction. And like you say, along those years, I'd accrued about 52 weeks of work experience. So some of it was like, you know, there were small animal practices, there were catteries, dog kennels. I even did some work at RVC. Yeah, I did some work at RVC. I think is it a Hawk Takes campus? I'm not sure, but it was like with one of the science labs. Like I think it was pathology and stuff like that with one of the labs there. So that was cool. What else I'd done? And then I've worked on like, you know, animal yards and stuff like that, charities, the typical kind of stuff, just to be exposed to animals. And that was one of the ones that hurt me most, because I was like with this charity for like 6 months, and I'd go there after school on Wednesdays and Saturdays and like, you know, muck out stables and feed pigs, and it'd be cold and it'd be snowing, your hands would be cold, but you still feed the pigs and stuff. Yeah, so I had all that experience, you know, and it comes to the point of applying. So, you know, you have your experience, had my A-level grades, my predicted grades at the time. You know, I was deputy head boy, I climbed Mount Everest, we've done the Duke of Edinburgh stuff, because I did Everest base camp. So I had all these, all the tick boxes and sort of thing. And I remember like, you know, even my form tutors were telling me, oh, you'll be fine. I did a personal statement thing and sent it off to like different admissions tutors, and they were like, oh yeah, you'll be all right. Yeah, you'll be fine. I'm sure you have your 4 applications that you apply to. And every single university rejected me. Every single one, just rejection. And I remember, because, you know, everybody gets their rejections kind of early on. But mine will take a little bit of time. In the vet space, it takes a little bit of time before you get the rejections back. So you're hearing back from them late, you're hearing back from them May time, knowing you're going to sit your exams in June or whatever. And so I remember waiting for my last one and hearing it and seeing the rejection. I was just devastated. And I was like, whoa, like, you know, my whole world's crashed. Like, that was everything that I've been planning for since that young age. What do I do now? And so there was a lot of moping about on my behalf. I remember moping my dog, like taking my dog for a walk. I'm moping and like my head down, and my mum coming out at the door saying, lift your head up, stop walking around, your head down, lift your head up. And I was like, okay. And like, you know, so like, you know, time heals things, you do the exams and stuff like that. I got the exams, didn't quite get the grades that I wanted, because I decided, okay, I'm gonna go and do like a gap year in India or something like that. So I started the summer, after I did the exams, the summer I spent in India for 8 weeks doing veterinary work, like small animal, large animal clinics as well. And I came back for the exam days, and I can kind of remember the dates loosely. It's like August 25th was the exam results dates. And so I came back for the results, saw the results, and it wasn't quite what I wanted. I think it was AAB or ABB or something along those lines. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe we'll call clearance and see what's in clearance. There was nothing in clearance. So I was like, okay, maybe what I'll do is take a gap year, resit the exams, you know, and then come back stronger. And then somebody must have said, like, I was kind of moping about it at the same time. And then this was like a 2-week period. Somebody must have said something to my dad about hungry or whatever. And I remember crying about clearance, not getting a place in clearance or whatever. And my dad said, look, vets are everywhere in the world. They need vets in Russia. They need vets in South America. They need vets in Africa. There's vets everywhere, and people study somewhere to go and get into this. So you'll get into it. And I was even talking about getting into like the horse physiotherapy and stuff. I said, no, you're going to do this vet medicine stuff, and you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And so somebody said something to my dad about Hungary or something like that. And we travel as a family, but I've never been to Hungary before. And like, you know, they said, okay, there's a university out there that does this vet medicine. Do you want check it out. And so my parents said, okay, go and do the research and see what you need to do. And I was like, okay, well, there's this form I need to do. There's some exams I need to do. I need to go and fly out and do an entrance exam. So my parents were like, okay, well, Ryanair were doing super cheap flights at that time. They just sent me on my way because I'd gone away for India for this like 8 weeks or whatever of summer. So my parents were used to me just disappearing and like, you know, like bye and then come back. So they were like, well, go to Hungary and figure it out. And I was like, okay. And so like, you know, so I flew out there to do the entrance exam. I sat down, did the entrance exam, and I remember the examiner being like to me, and at that time I didn't know the examiner was the dean of the whole veterinary course. And I remember the examiner being like to me, oh yeah, so what are you going to do about finding a place to stay or whatever? And I said, oh, if I get the place, if I get the position in the university, I'll look for a place to stay or something like that. And he's like, oh no, you've already got the place. And I was like, huh? And then yeah, and then but after that it was all kind of like, it was all history. And so it was just 6 years of just boom, 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 one thing after the next. Like, and I was living in Hungary, and 6 years later, you know, here we are, or 9 years later now, I guess. yeah, here we are. And so that might have like my trip into Hungary, but.
Wow, that's so interesting that you both studied, well, technically, compared to me, because I'm in a London university, so that's a UK university, you both went abroad. That's really interesting. When you were studying abroad, were you the only BAME people at that university in the specific veterinary field? Or was it because it was international, there were more diverse people?
I'll kind of weigh in on that. Okay, so not the only in that umbrella, which is very wide, then no, technically. But if we're talking about visibly being non-white or non-white passing, then essentially yes, for at least 3 years. I think when I was in my 3rd or 4th year, there was another West Indian parent with a British parent, so mixed guy that came in, who joined. And then the same year or the year after that, there was this guy that I actually helped mentor to get in from India, and helped him get in, because I'm not sure about Budapest, but the application for these they're all usually under some different agents. So Budapest will have a different person that manages that, and then my uni had several different universities. So they had Milan medicine, and then they had, you know, Brno veterinary medicine, but they didn't deal with the medicine course. So my agent was the agents I had to use to get into my university was a little bit odd. He manages Warsaw for veterinary medicine, and they were like trying to push me to Warsaw. Now. No, I'm not really trying to cast aspersions about Warsaw, but it wasn't particularly a very welcoming place for me to really go to. I'm not saying Czech Republic is heaven on earth, but the last place I really wanted to go to was Warsaw for a variety of reasons. And so again, that process was a little bit awkward. How about you? But you said you just flew out, didn't you, Bolu? You just kind of got there and did the test.
Mine was on a very big limb. Like, it wasn't as prepared and structured. So it was like that it was like I said, the exam results were 25th of August. And I think semester in Budapest started 6th of September. And I flew out at some point in between. Yeah. And I got somewhere in between. And I remember doing the exam somewhere in between. I was like, oh, well, term starts next week. And I was like, huh? And I hadn't told any of my friends that I was doing it. So I like kind of flew back to England for the weekend, packed my bags into like a little stroller, like, you know, the hand luggage for Ryanair. Went back to Budapest, and I was staying in a hostel for the first 2 weeks of university. And I remember being late to lectures and stuff like that, because I was in this crazy hostel on the other side of the town that was far from the university, and trying to like organize this chaos, and with like only like, you know, 5 pieces of clothing to my name. and yeah, so it was very.
I had the same thing. The same thing. When I did my entrance exam, no word of, because of basically, now I thought it was because of my agent, but maybe it's just universal. But my agent who managed it, I did an entrance exam, and the papers didn't get to the university at the right time.
Yeah. And
so we had this big like rigmarole around getting the papers and them not receiving it and me being past the deadline or whatever. So when it was really late, I said, look, I've applied, I've paid my money to try and get in, and you've seen that I paid my money, but I haven't done this exam. So, and they were like, okay, come out and fly on this date. So I flew out, did the entrance exam on Friday. The semester started on Monday. And I went,
how does this work? Like, what?
What would you mean? And I'm like, yes. So that weekend, my mom flew out with me. Now I brought extra things because I didn't know how long I was going to be there for all the paperwork. So I had about a week's worth of stuff. And they were like, yeah, it's on Monday. So I did the exam on Friday. They did me a niceness and marked it. Realized I actually did really well in the exam. I got in. Then the same day I contacted, we had like a pizza or whatever to celebrate. The next morning at 8 a.m., we went to the an agent to look for accommodation. Looked at 3 different places, accepted the second place, moved in the same day, got the keys. Then on Sunday we went to IKEA, and as soon, we were there at the door basically. Yeah. Bought like a year's worth of IKEA stuff so I could move into the place. My mom flew back on the Sunday, and a very disheveled, scared-looking Fabian turned up to a lecture on Monday morning, and that's how I started my university.
That's crazy. That's so crazy. You both had a weekend to like mentally prepare for starting the journey.
Yeah. And
it was funny.
No, go for it.
Because I turned up so late, there was like this introduction course, like to get you used to what to expect. And so everyone had done that. It was me and like one other person who'd flown out late who hadn't done that. So I turned up, all these people, Swedes, Norwegians, Finnish, Icelandic, Israeli, Greeks, Germans, Dutch, Italians, all were like chummy, and there was me like just boxing in, this like very lanky, scared looking person with like bags down to here, like, all right.
And that is legit how mine went, because like I said, like when you ask about the BAME question, then it's like, yeah, at that particular time in my year, I was the only black person that was there. So I remember walking in late into this introductory class. It wasn't even it was like introductory anatomy. It was like the first anatomy lecture. And me and one other girl who is Greek, and we both walked in late. And then I remember walking in and just seeing like, you know, everybody in this lecture hall, and this thick old school communist kind of lecture hall. And like, you know, it's about 7 rows deep that are almost going to like a vertical ascent. And you walk in there and you're like, whoa, there's everybody here and there's not a black face amongst it. And I just walk in about it, and you can kind of see, you're going to feel all this gaze just kind of heavily glued onto you. You're like, oh, and you're just like, hi everybody, and and then you just kind of squealing away through the Norwegians and the Swedes and the Germans, everybody. So it was, I mean, and it was a diverse group of us because we're an international school. So I mean, there were people I don't know how it was in Czech, but we had a German course, an English course, and a Hungarian course. Okay, so the Hungarian course, there was also in Hungarian. It was all the Hungarian students, you know, that come up their way from secondary school, etc. Then German course, some Germans switch from universities. They switch like in the first year, and they come over to study in Hungary as like an exchange kind of thing, and they finish their studies in Hungary, or they do part of their studies in Hungary, and then go back to Germany. Or they have the option to. And then there's the English course, which is the international course, where literally we're just like a cesspit of different nationalities. So we're like, you know, everybody's from everywhere. So, you know, there's Lebanese people, Cypriots, Greeks. You know, there are some of the Germans on the English course as well. You know, we've got the UK lot, we've got the Irish. There's a big Irish community in Budapest, really big. Obviously the Norwegian community is probably the next big one. You know, Iraqis, Americans, like everybody from everywhere, but not many BAME people. so everybody was from everywhere. But yeah, it was just kind of like, oh well, this is cool. And yeah, the rest is. But then later on, there were some people that came in. We had some other people that came in, but like that were like, you know, from different backgrounds as well, making it a bit more diverse. But it did come to a point where I was kind of like a landmark in the school. It's like, oh yeah, that guy, the 6'4" black guy. Oh yeah, turn left to him, and you'll see the anatomy lecture hall on the right. Yeah, oh yeah. If you see the 6'4" black guy, you've gone too far. Come back a bit. And that was kind of how it went. But you know, it was absolutely fun, and it was still an amazing experience. It was just like, you know, one of the things where you step out of your comfort zone, but after a while you realize that everybody's there for the same reason. We're all there to, you know, learn and stuff like that, and nobody really does care about the color of your skin. I mean, there are some people that might do, but yeah, you know, it was a great experience. It didn't stop anything.
That's so cool. So do you think because you studied like away, like internationally, that helped you more when you came back to like start working in practice?
I would say yes. I think studying in those countries, there's very much a sink or swim energy to it, as in the fact that, I mean, veterinary medicine is sink or swim for a lot of people anyway, but I think being abroad and having all of those things thrown at you at the same time definitely enforces that. So a lot of people who found being there the first year is very difficult. Our dropout rate was somewhere, I think it was at least, I think we started with 60 and we ended with 30 of the original cohort. So 50% of my year like dropped out because I know from experience and from what I've heard from people still in the UK, it is hard, don't get me wrong, but there's definitely a support network and there's an element of trying to support you where possible in the UK. It isn't like that out in the East. There isn't like that at all. It's like you get a certain amount of freedom. I mean, in the Czech Republic, you get a certain amount of freedom to do what the hell you want. As long as you turn up to the exam being knowledgeable. That's it. You know, we're not going to follow you up. If you don't turn up to lecture, that's your problem. You're not going to be at a seminar, that's your problem. But if you turn up and you don't tell me that you know stuff, I will tell you that you don't know yourself and send you on your way and laugh at you on the way out. Like it is very, it's a very hard line approach. But what I think, and that's what that sink or swim, if you need a little bit of support, you need easing into it, it's not the place for you. But if you are someone who likes to kind of get into it and is willing to graft in a very kind of like hardline way, but appreciates the kind of freedom that affords you as a result, then it was really, really positive. And I think dealing with clients, like I did most of my like EMS because we don't have the same requirements. But EMS in the UK, I did most of it the PDSA, and I had loads of different like really aggressive clients who, you know, would kick off when I came back to the UK to do experience. And it was normal because I had to deal with my lecturers. Like if I can deal with my lecturers, I can deal with anything that you bring to the table because that is what it is like. There is no messing around at all. And I think in that sense, it did prepare me. But for some people, it was very heavy-handed. And so in some senses, people were left a little bit traumatized, a little bit, for lack of better words. But you know, it's. I mean, I'm sure Bolu clearly agrees.
It's so many parallels. Like it's so many parallels because I guess I don't know. Maybe it's an Eastern European thing. You know, there is that kind of stereotype. They're a little bit colder and firmer over there. Yeah, and it's true. You know, there's a bit more hair on the chest and deeper voices. You kind of go out there and the university is there's no mollycoddling about it. There's no hand holding. When I heard that my friends got reading weeks and they have tutorials, like one-on-one tutorials and all these things, and I was like, what is it? Like, you know, we're having an exam like every day, and they're giving us dense amounts of lecture notes and course notes and things to get through, and the amount of things and like what they expect of you. Like when I first found out that I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong because I'm probably still off, but that I think it's 60 or 70% is the first. And I was like, oh, wait, what? Like we had to, like there are some exams where they say you had to get like 95% in order to continue. Like, you know, they were like, you have to get 90%, you have to get all this 60% or whatever would be, I can't remember how our grades were, but they were like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And like, I feel like 60% was like a 2. So that's like a pass. That's just about a pass. Whereas like a 4 and a 5, you want to be getting a 4 and a 5. And those are like the 90s, the high 90s. And like the difference between a 4 and a 5 might be 90% to 95%. And so it's like really tough kind of things. And they'd make you do all these different exams. And like Fabian said, there's a freedom to it, but it's at your own cost, you know. It's like what you put into it is what you get back. So if you're gonna sit down and lounge around and expect to pass, you know, joke's on you. So, and it was just kind of very intense. You have to structure your learning, figure out what you want to get out from it, and then put it in. So yeah, it does kind of help with that same mentality coming here.
I think when I worked out how many exams and like credit tests, which are like mini tests I did, I think I worked out I'd done in 6 years nearly 300 tests, different individual tests.
I wouldn't be
And
surprised.
because I think I worked it out, and then of that, and then again, like 40 different oral exams, individual oral exams. So it was when you're being like, it's attacked as a word. It's quite a violent amount of number when you say it. Like I'm trying to find the words, the language to explain how many times you'd go into an. I remember one week, my first year, right, and my first year, I completely destroyed myself to try and make sure I was on point, right? Because this is the thing I've been working for my whole entire life. I wasn't going to let it go.
Exactly.
And I think I had, before our exam period, because I had two, I mean, I'm not sure if it's the same, but I had two main semesters. We do little tests throughout this, and at the end of it, you had two periods, like exam periods. Like, so the second semester, just before the end, we had all these different exams, and they all coincided with 1 week. And I remember in one day I had 4 exams, completely different disciplines. And that week I had 12 exams in total. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, I'm not sure. I remember before one exam, I pulled out this PowerPoint for like, I don't know what it was. It was like a histology credit. And I was like, 40 slides, like smashing through different histology slides. Right, okay. What's that? I don't know that. And the exam was like 5 minutes away. And I just remember, it's just, the energy there is just exams. If after you've done your exams, you can do what the hell you want.
And it felt like being on holiday because you're in another country. So you're like, oh yeah, but you know,
I'm going to Vienna for lunch. You know what I mean? I'm going to go to Prague for the weekend because it's up the road. You know, it is. You know, and it is that energy entirely. But it's just, when you're in the middle of it, it's ruthless. And I remember after all my first year exams, I tell this story all the time. It was like just before I decided to make trainee vet. After first year, I did my histology exam because I'd killed myself to do that exam. I sat in a room and ate Subway, nothing but Subway, breakfast, lunch, dinner for 3 days. 3 days, I just sat there looking absolutely confused, lost, like you'd found me in, you know, the lost section of a very dusty looking store, and I sat there and ate Subway for 3 days because I just thought to myself, what's just happened? And that is the energy they want from you. You do the exam, you pass the exam. After you're done, I don't care. I don't care if you're gonna sit in your room 3 days and just breathe, you know, and get yourself on a ventilator. They don't care. But once you've done that, and
that fox on the edge of the bed, the disheveled fox on the edge of the bed, sitting there like, what happened? Like, what was that? Because that's exactly what it is. And that, as you're saying it, it's realizing that was something that I used to always describe to my friends when I came back from university, was that Hungary, and I guess it's Eastern Europe, is very academic. It's very knowledge-based. It's very, these are the books you need to know. There's no excuse why you shouldn't know it, and know it inside and out. And that's how they treat the exams. Like, you have these oral exams, and you know, you do these oral exams, and it's like 250 topics, and they will have a topic list, and it might be 250 topics, and they have the cards on their desk, and you have to pick out three of these topics, and then you'll see it, and it will say, like, you know, it will say something stupid, like, I don't know even how to even explain it. It might just say, they silly topics like, production of eggs and geese, and this and that, and then this, and there's just 3 randomly jumbled topics, and then you now have to sit in front of the lecturer. He gives you 10 minutes to write down on a piece of paper, you gather your thoughts, and then you sit in the lecturer, and now he starts asking you, okay, talk to me about this topic, and you just have to start. And he's not asking you questions, just waiting for you to finish. And then when he finishes, it's like, on your first topic, you missed out about this. Can you elaborate? And that's how it was. And sometimes, like Fabian said, you'd have 4 of these exams in one day. You might have anatomy one day, animal husbandry, botany, and like zoology. And then you just do it all in that one day. Because also there was this thing of, when we arranged our exams, we had to book online through like a website called Neptune, and we'd all race to try it, like, because you log in, it's a free for all. And the internet crashes, and it's a free for all because everybody's trying to get earlier dates. Because the earlier you do your exam dates, the earlier you can fly home. So some people would do early dates, but you'd plan your dates because you don't want to be stuck with the crap dates or like certain exams back to back. And you plan, like, you know, maybe I want to do my anatomy and biochemistry first because they're the big ones, and then do the smaller ones after. So you'd plan your dates, but sometimes you wouldn't be lucky and you'd have some big exams just back to back to back with no space to revise in between. And so you'd have all these different things. I remember like one of my botany finals, in part of the final, the teacher had like, I don't know, a collection of 70 different grasses, legumes, seeds, everything. And he'd pull out a seed and he'd be like, okay, what's this seed and what's this fact? And you'd be like, oh, that is the white lupin. And you have to say the Latin name and you'd be like, oh, it has this toxin and this one's like, you know, ochratoxin. And you'd be like, oh, like, you know, the stuff of recognizing ferns. And I was like, I will never, ever look at this grass and be like, yeah, this is alfalfa. Well, to be fair, alfalfa hay, you know, and then we're like, oh, yeah, the calcium to phosphorus ratio in alfalfa hay is X, right? And, you know, you really have to know this stuff. And I'm talking about, I've been in this university for 6 months and I had to do this sort of stuff. And it was like, it was such a big shock, and it was such a big shock to the system that, yeah, some people felt it traumatic. And after the exam season, you'd really want to let loose. But yeah, it's one of those things, I guess, like, it's a different kind of person that when you go through all that stuff and you make it out the other end, you know the kind of person you are, and it does kind of mold you into the kind of vets that we are today, and you know the kind of stuff you have to experience, because the real veterinary world is a bit like that. It is a bit like, here you go. I was describing it to students the other day. Was like becoming a vet, and the jump from graduate to new grad, and this is the analogy I always use, is kind of like everybody's done their driver's license, you pass your driving test, and you're able to drive, fantastic, and you go on the road for the first time and it's a bit intrepid because you're driving, it's like, oh my God. But from new grad to vet is like, you pass your driver's license and then they give you a Formula One car and they let you out on the tiny little streets of the road. You're like, wait, hold on, which one's the indicator button again? How do we do this? Wait, it's a Formula One car. Why is it when I press the oh, it's going so fast. It's 200 miles per hour and it's a 20 mile per hour road. What am I doing? Like, you know, and it's like a Formula One car, and you know, all the steering wheel is just the little gear sticks and like buttons, and you're like, wait, this is not what I learned in my driver, and you're just trying to figure that out. And that's legit what it felt like for me, at least, of being new grad and then coming into the real world, because all of a sudden it's like, here you go, responsibilities on you now. You got to make the decisions, and that was that big thing of coming to grips of like there's a couple things that I had to kind of face when you finish the course, you finish studying veterinary medicine. It's that thing of, okay, now whatever I say is kind of taken as Bible. Like when I talk to people, you know, people are expecting me, my knowledge, they come to me and wanting knowledge from me, and they're seeking it from me. And when you're left in a practice and, you know, maybe you're a bit more independent in some places and you might not have some like greater mentors and things like that in the workplace, people are looking to you for answers. Their dog is sick and they don't care if it's your first day, they want to know what's up. And so it's like, you know, okay, here we go. And so that was like one of those things I had to face is that, okay, people are going to want answers from me, but not only that, whatever I say, one, is recorded, and two, it's like, I have to know what I'm talking about. I could tell people brush a dog's teeth with carrots every day because it's good for dental hygiene, and they'll believe me. But I have to make sure I'm saying the right stuff, you know? So it's that sort of thing. You could say whatever you want. I could say, get a baby wipe, and, you know, and people will say, oh, well, it's coming from an authoritative perspective, so he must be right. But it's so easy for you to feel that you could lead somebody astray. And so you reflect on that and like, okay, I'm going to make sure the knowledge that I'm putting out there is correct. But it's one of those things that you have to come to grips with when you go making that transition from graduate to new grad, is that, okay, I can't just say stuff off the cuff anymore.
Yeah.
You can't just blag something and be like, oh, well, yeah, dogs have 6 toes. What? What? Like, you know, you really have to give them the answer they're looking for, or at least the truth. I don't know. And that's another big, powerful thing as well that I think a lot of people take for granted as well, just the truth of being able to say, look, this is out of my depth. Let me refer you, or, you know, let me discuss this case with a colleague. And people appreciate the honesty more than anything. But I think I'm skipping a big chapter of going from university to new grad.
I was going to say, well, my next question is, you kind of talked about it. What was your first job like? So you just graduated, and then was your first job in the UK? Did you come back to the UK as your first like grad job?
My first job is still my current job. So one thing that I never thought was possible was going straight into exotics. And so,
which is amazing. That's really amazing. That's awesome.
But yeah, no, I just didn't think it was possible, because I'd always been told by UK vets, yeah, it's something you develop. You know, you don't do much exotics at undergrad, and if you're still interested, then you develop it and you go and do specialisms and or you go straight into internship. And I didn't want to do that because the money was embarrassing for 6 years of study. So I was just like, I'm not doing that. But because I went to, I mean, how I got into exotics is a little bit weird because I always liked exotics. I didn't think it was possible. And so my final year, we have a lot of choice over our final year exams. It probably is the same in Budapest. So we have 2 compulsory exams that you have to do, which is infectious diseases and like meat and milk hygiene. That's the things I had to do. And then I had complete choice over what other modules I did. So I chose originally, I was going to do a thesis in like new ways to approach cranial cruciate ligament disease, clinical pathologies, and then small animal medicine. And then because of some politics in the university, which is always something that you always don't think should be an issue in a vet uni, like it's a vet uni, like, but there was some politics over my thesis because my course leader was having some issue and he wasn't considering whether he was going to stay in the university or something. So I got the funding, but then they cancelled my thesis. And so I already done half the research for it, but then I was kind of left in the dark about doing the rest of it. So then I was like, well, what's available? And exotics was there. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not going to get a job in exotics, but I love exotic medicine. And because I really wanted to be ready for day one, and I knew I was going to go into smallies. And so I was like, let me do exotics, and maybe I can go into a practice and do small exotic stuff, and then consider if I want to do it later in life. So I did the rotation. The rotation was great. And part of my rotation, I had to do 2 weeks in a practice somewhere else, not in the university. And so I was looking around, I was looking for zoos in the Czech Republic, so I didn't really fancy traveling back. Turns out that everything was booked up or whatever. So I looked in Birmingham and I got an opportunity to go and see practice at an exotics practice. And we just hit it off really well. I was a lot better than I thought I was when it came to exotic animal knowledge for a new grad, and they really responded well to that. And so that's where I ended up getting my place. So I did my small animal rotation, most of it there as well. And so I went into that, and within like the first day, I was already doing small, like kind of exotics things. And that wouldn't have happened if I hadn't done that rotation at the university, which is very odd for most universities to allow anyway. And so that was my first transition. And I remember my first day, I'd done something. It's weird actually, Bolu. Me and you have so many similarities because I actually did. Yeah, I went to India and did a 2-week animal birth control course with the WVS. So it was weird you mentioning the whole India situation because I did something similar in between 4th and 5th year. And so I had surgical capability like day one. So the first day they were like, yeah, we're going to wean you into this process. You know, we see a variety of different animals here. And the first day they were like, supposed to, let's just get you on vaccination, see how you get on. And I remember doing like 9 or 10 consults my first day, and the second day I did 4 surgeries. And I was like, you guys, like, where is the weaning? Where is the transition? Who was weaning exactly? So, but the first transition into that was very strange because I didn't really. When you're in exotics, you don't really have time to settle into anything. So you still have to be a bookworm anyway when you start. But really, I was seeing everything, and that was my first foray, and it still is because, like I said, like currently there's not many exotics options, and I love exotics. I can't see my life doing anything but exotics is a really big part of it. And where am I going to go? I would have to move to London if I was going to do that. You know, I wouldn't want to move anywhere else. So I'm kind of here still.
That's really interesting.
Strange.
What about you, Bolu? What's your first job like?
My first job kind of thing, yeah. I'm in my second job now. But my first job was, it was, like I said, that was the best way for me to describe it. I actually came up with that analogy when I was at my first job of the whole driving license and going into a Formula One, because it was very much that. I was like, cool, I passed vet school. Wait, I'm a vet. Oh my God. Like, you know, and everything just hit me at once because I graduated like end of February, I think it was. And I'd already organized with my last semester and the EMS stuff. I'd already organized to start at this practice. I'd been in talks to the practice and start with them, I think it was 8th of March. for some reason dates just stick into my head like that. But yeah, 8th of March, and yeah, and I was like, okay, cool. So I finished in Budapest, had a bit of a party with my friends, all that sort of stuff. Last goodbyes. All right, flying back to England. The Monday I'm gonna start work, and boom, it was just kind of come to work. And I remember they were like, oh well, here's the emergency exit, safety stuff, blah blah. Oh, can you do a bitch spray? And I was like, I know the theory. I could do it, and I'm confident about it. And then I was like, okay, here you go. And so literally, that was my description. Is that was my first. Within like the first 2 hours of me being there, I was ready. Boom, into the theatre you go, and this is by myself. So in the theatre, I went with the bitch spray. I had the bitch spray on the table, and I was like, whoa, because I remember the vet that was actually in charge, who was supposed to do that up that day. She was like to me, okay. What do you know about this? And I'm very surgically inclined. I love surgery. Like I had a surgical teacher in like my 4th year of uni, and he really inspired me because the way he used to talk about the body and anatomy and surgery, I was like, yeah, this guy's cool. I like I like that. I want to be like that. And so yeah, everything surgical was like my thing. I really loved surgery, and I like to like memorize surgical steps. And so I remember she pulled me aside and she was like, okay, so how would you approach a bitch spray? And I was like, okay, cool. So midline incision, midline incision, open up, cut through the linea alba, you're inside the peritoneum, you're looking for the ovaries. And then I say blunt dissect the suspensory ligament, free the ovary, blah, blah, blah. So I'd walked her through all the steps, and there were obviously bits where I was saying stuff a little bit wrong, and she's like, okay, no, don't worry, yeah, just do that instead. And it's like, okay, yeah, cool. And this is just the talk through, run through. And she's like, oh, well, I think you can do it. So I'm going to leave you. I'm going to go down and do my consults, and then you do. I was like, huh? Where? Who? And you get a little bit of chill, and I was like, well, come on, let's do this. Okay, so and then I went in there and I did it, and I started doing the bitch spray. Don't let me fool you. I remember my first 7 bitch sprays, and I tell this to every time I have students inside in the practice with me, or if they're like EMS students that come to work and see stuff. And I'm probably operating at the same time when they're asking me stuff. And I always say this, I still remember my first 7 because there was always something that didn't go how I wanted to go. Like I was like, oh. And this was my very first one, and I remember it happening. And I was closing, and you're closing the vessels and things like that. And then, things don't necessarily go smooth. And I say, oh, could you get the other vet in just to kind of check, just to make sure that everything's okay? And she came and she like helped me out, like right at the end, kind of like as a buzzer blue kind of thing, and just kind of closing up. And then I had that, and then I ended up doing like 2 consults after that. And then one of the other vets was like to me, hey, do you want to come with me on a house visit to do a euthanasia? And I was like, I mean, okay. And like, yeah, and so it was like my first day was bitch spray, consults, house visit, euthanasia, come back, and I was like, I don't even know how to use the system to write notes. Like, how does it, and literally from there it was boom, and it was mixed practice. It was in Kent where I live, and it was mixed practice, and so I told them when I joined them I wanted to do mainly small animal because that's my preference. I do small animal, but at the same time I was studying for my American qualification, the European Commission of Foreign Veterinary Graduates. And so I was studying for that, and so I had large animal knowledge in my head, and I didn't want to let it recede because I was studying heavy for the NAVLI and these other exams as well as the practical. So I would hang around when they did large animal stuff. I'd be like, oh, what are you guys doing with that goat? Oh, that's a pig? Tell me more. And then, I'd just be about it, I'd help out and do stuff, but I was mainly small animals. I did a lot of small animal stuff. And yeah, it was just kind of one thing after the next. And the thing about it is that, because I remember talking with the owner at the time, and he was like, you're very confident. And I remember saying that in my interview, actually. I remember that was the thing that I was telling them when I was trying to get the job, is that I'm very confident. I'm confident in a lot of things that I'll do, and I'm a confident person. But as a confident person, like, I'm happy to get on with stuff, but I need somebody to tell me if I'm doing something wrong, because my confidence will lead me to the point of, now I understand it, I've got the terminology is kind of confirmation bias. My confidence will lead me to the point of where, okay, I'll just keep doing it, but I won't know I'm doing something wrong, but I might be getting the right result in the end, do you know what I mean? Like, you're doing something consistently and you're getting the right results, but you could be doing a better job, but you're getting a result. The animal's getting better, but you could have done this instead, It's like giving antibiotics for an upset stomach. The animal might get better, but that's not necessarily the first way you should go. Like, why are you going to go and just give like broad spectrum antibiotics straight away? So it's that sort of thing of like, And that's what I told him. I was like, I'm confident enough to get on with it. Like, fine, if you're not gonna give me support, it's okay. Like, if I can't get full support, that's all right. But I need somebody to at least pop in and tell me, like, you know, do this instead, or you can do this better, or you're doing this wrong, or something. And it was there or not. And that's what the boss was saying at the time, that it's this kind of fine line of, you want to support graduates, but you also don't want them to become so clingy that every 2 seconds asking you, oh, but what do you think? And excuse me, can I have an opinion? And can I, because they need to get on with it. And I think the vet world, especially, I think now we're starting to adjust and accommodate for people's mental health and things like that as well. But especially like the older school vets are very from a place of, we grafted to get here. You learn you're making mistakes, and you have to see it through, and you'll become better from it. Yeah. But in reality, that's what causes trauma, because like, you know, that first bitch break could go horribly wrong, and that's what turns people away from surgery for the rest of their lives. You know, and it will still give that intrepidation, and that's why there's a lot of vets that might say, "Oh, I bitch way, I don't want to go near it." But you know, like, because you get that one traumatic experience, because somebody might have told you just to get on with it, or you'll be fine, or it'll be all right, and all of a sudden that's like something's gone wrong, and you don't know how to handle it, and then that's the thing that, you know, makes or breaks people, in that it's a real test of character. Yeah. You know, and sometimes surgery is like that. I think that's probably why I like surgery, because medicine's one side of, there's a slow burn to medicine. You can prescribe drugs and stuff like that, but sometimes you might not see the effects. Unless you're doing emergency critical care, you might not see the effects for maybe a month, maybe 2 weeks, something like that. You might not see the effects. And so sometimes some people might say, I feel comfortable in medicine. Not necessarily because of that, but sometimes because of that, you know, delayed results. It's kind of like, oh, well, this time the body's doing its thing in the background. Also, the drugs are doing its thing in the background. We'll see what happens in 2 weeks' time. Surgery is very, cutting an artery, the blood's hitting the ceiling. You're like, like, you know, it's very right there and there. The dog might crash under anesthetic, or there's something happening, or, you know, you've done something wrong, or it's very then and then. So you have to really make that decision. And that's part of the thing that, you know, can make or break people at that time. You really test your character, that sort of thing. I do love surgery, but also it is a very fine line that you're always teetering when you're by yourself and you don't have the safety net of, like, you know, of the great specialist behind you, or the really experienced vet behind you. That idea of being by yourself is very daunting, and that's that first experience. And that's why I compare it to the Formula One, because even like my first cat castrate, I remember doing the next day I did my first cat castrate, and I remember like waking up in the middle of the night, and everybody knows cat castrates are pretty straightforward, but I remember waking up in the middle of the night like, oh, he's bleeding out, and you know, I'd sweat, and I'm like, oh, what happened? Oh, maybe I didn't tie the knot fully. Meanwhile, things I know now is that the animal was fine during recovery. It was fine when it went home. It was, you know, it was bright, it was alert, it was showing all these signs. But in my head, certain things were just missing because I hadn't checked all those things at that time. You know, you kind of just do stuff and get on. I'd wake up in the middle of the night like, oh, the cat castrate's breathing. I need to go, and I'll go the next day like, have they called? Is the animal still alive? You know, that sort of thing. And then, you know, after a while you start to understand what you need to do to check stuff, and also to be able to relinquish some of that anxiety and fear and let it go, because knowing that you've done a good job. Like I always say it in my surgeries, whether I have my student nurses in there or students in there, and I'm saying, look, I like to tie 2 ligatures in some places, or I will double secure a knot, because that lets me sleep at night. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, what happens is you start to go over things in your head when you're not there. And when you're not there, you can't do anything because you're not there anymore. So it's better to have a process in your mind and go through it and say, look, I'm going to tie this. I'm not going to let anybody say, I'm going to make a big incision so I can make sure I can see things. You know, I'm going to do this. I'm going to tie this knot, because at the end of the day, those are things I'm going to think about in my head when I go to sleep at night. And I want to be able to sleep like a baby. I don't want to be waking up like, oh, did I tie a second knot? How tight was that knot? At least I know if my first knot wasn't that great, my second knot was better. You know, and I checked for bleeding. Did I check for bleeding? Did I check all 4 quadrants? Fantastic. Or did I do this? Did I check the bloods? Did I report this? You know, but making sure everything is methodical. It's kind of like a due diligence, a due process, that kind of thing, that is methodical, so that if I ever, for me to be able to handle it later and to release that anxiety, that's what I need to do in terms of accepting it, that, okay, I did what I need to do. It's good. Like, you know, we're good. I don't need to sweat it. Don't sweat it. Don't worry about the cat bleeding out and that, because you tied 7 ligatures and you make sure, because you sung happy birthday for 1, 2, 3, but you know, that's that sort of thing, you know. So all those sorts of things. But yeah, like that was what my experience, my first job, and yeah, then had a little bit of a hiatus, and I've now I moved house. I moved out of my like family house, and I moved to London. And I've started in this practice in London, and now I'm like working sole charge, which is like, it was kind of a step. I was like, am I really ready for sole charge? Like, ready? But then after experiencing everything I experienced in the last practice, and because it was in a rural area, you get a lot of crazy cases.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, you know what? I think I can handle most things that get thrown my way. And I think, to be fair, in honesty, most people probably could as well. They just don't necessarily believe in themselves enough. But that's where my little like, oh yeah, I'm confident. And then I get there like, oh mom. so yeah, but you know, it was a big step, and it's going great, touch wood. Like, I mean, you know, like Fabian said before, it's kind of like you get used to a lot of things, and you start thinking, okay, what's next? Is there more? Where do we go now? Like, you know, and my whole thing is I've always wanted to do internship residencies. Like I said, I was trying to go into America. I was actually planning to be in America this year. But COVID, like, you know, COVID, and that's a big thing for plans. That's like, I think we're in a vein of, I'm going on for so long, but like we're in a vein of like a community where we all think 5 years ahead, sort of kind of thing. Sometimes, you know, you have all these plans and all the structure you want to do, and COVID was like a big testament of, well, I see your plans, but this is what we're doing here. And COVID really showed us the ropes. Like, okay, well, step aside. You're gonna have to sit on your ass for a little while. And it was like, okay, now what? And then it makes you slow down and makes you assess things. And it's like, okay, maybe you don't have to rush to America. You know, a big part of me is now starting to accept that this profession, especially, like, as much as we rush to get things done and get things under our belt, this profession is very much about paying your dues.
Yeah.
You have to pay your dues. You have to do your time. Like, you know, the one bad day that you've had in your 2 years, your 3 years, or the 5 bad days that you've had, the vet that's 20 years in this game has had, you know, 5 times those bad days, and they've had 5 times those strange cases, you know, 5 times those difficult clients. They've been around the park, and that's what they call experience. That really, you've really been here and done that. Cool. Like, you know, that's how you respect it. And that's why when I look at some of these people, like I said, my goal is to specialize, but you look at some of these specialists and you look at their history, and they say 5 years general practice or 6 years in emergency critical care. You know, oh, that's so long. How are they doing that? Why not just go internship? That's it. But it passes like that. But those 5 years is the experience. It's those bad days, the good days, the difficult clients, the cases you struggled with, the patients that may not have made it, the patients that made it. All of it is like this big database that you're sitting on, so that fundamentally you just become better at that time. And when you get to the point that you want to get to, you will become, you know, better at that time and well worth it. So yeah. I don't know where I went on that tangent, but
no, that was really interesting. I want to kind of move on, because you both have like public vet Instagram accounts. So why did you feel like that was something that you wanted to do? Was that like a specific decision, or were you just kind of like, oh, I think this is really cool, I want to share it with people?
Well, I think for me, coming back to what I mentioned earlier, the context of where Dready Vet started was I did my first year of uni, like I said before, I destroyed myself, like really destroyed myself to be top student.
Yeah.
And I'd waited so long for this opportunity.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to let anyone take it. I worked ridiculously. I was the person who would be going to other people's lessons, you know, in seminars where I could, and ask the teacher, beg the teacher, can I come into and do the lesson again, you know, and do all of that type of thing. And I did that for a year. And my grades were flawless, but I did all my exams. And like I said, after my last exam, I ate Subway in a quiet room, watched TV, and I don't remember it. It was just this kind of glazed. I was pretty much in a Fabian-induced in coma for 3 days, and I was sponsored by Subway. And after that lifted, and I'd realised there was sun outside, I said to myself, I've got these grades, and what does it mean? No one's going to ask me when they come into a vet clinic what grade I got in my anatomy exam. No one's going to ask me about how many extra lessons of histology. No one's going to ask me that I managed to teach some of my colleagues some topography of the knee. No one's going to ask. It's for what? And so I realized at that point that, again, I don't do things in straight lines. I've got to do something which is bigger than just, because there's going to be people who are interns and specialists and have done nothing but veterinary medicine and are always going to be better at me than something else. And I'm not a competitive type of person. I'm the least competitive person ever. So doing all of that, what value do I get from veterinary medicine which I can attach to myself? And so I decided I wanted to create a space, not for anyone else, but mainly for me, that I could do something where I could either share something or just do something that was a little bit different. So initially, Ready Vet was just I made it a week later, was just a vessel for me to create something which made me connected to the course a bit more than just, I need to pass, I'm a robot, And so I did like opinion pieces, and I went to like Royal Ascot, which was like a whole welfare thing, like horse racing, and so I did like videos on that. And then I was talking about, like third year, I was talking about animal slaughter and religious slaughter and the politics of that. And then I had some cases, and then I went on Twitter and like asked some of the other vets that I were relatively big at the time, and like other vet students, and like, I have this toxicology case, and it's like this little project for me. What are your opinions? And they would give me kind of real responses to what I would do in the future. So it was just a really good way for me, a vessel for me to do something that felt wide as opposed to the binary of exams. And then it developed into, actually, people were investing not so much in me going, I have this case. It was very much, we like your take on it. Expand on this. And and I started to write opinion pieces, and I started to comment on things that happened in the veterinary community. And I remember one, I had this WordPress, which is still up, and I had London Vet Show were just starting this newspaper and they do it twice a year, but usually just before London Vet Show. And they were like, we're looking for bloggers. So, or to write a piece, because I was just looking to make it. And so I said, look, I can write you one. And so I wrote one, and they were like, oh, I actually really like this piece. And so I wrote another one, and I wrote another one, and I wrote another one, and I wrote another one. And so I had the WordPress and the Vet Show. And then it just really expanded from there. So by the time I graduated, Ready Vet had already been a brand, inverted commas, for 5 years already. And via that, I'd already started to get interest from like media, like companies, like TV companies saying, oh, your name says vet. We know you're a vet student, but are you interested in when are you graduating? Can we keep you on file? And we're doing, a congress. Can you do some media work for us? And so the media side kind of grew with that. And so being public by the time I graduated was just like, it was a great opportunity, because now I was finally a vet. And it's just kind of grown from there. It's not that it was an active decision initially. And I always had this idea that you shouldn't get into doing something like this because you're going to be the next Noel Fitzpatrick. Or you're going to be the next Bolu. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? But but I really mean that. Like it was like, if one person gets a little bit of value from it, great. But I started that entirely for myself. It really was for myself, because it was an outlet. Because after the first year, I wasn't connected to the course, because I destroyed myself looking for some feedback, and I'd got all these great grades, and I still didn't feel connected to the course. And it's ironic, at the very point when I started to just do things for myself is actually when I got the most interest, and it just kind of snowballed from there. And that's where I'm at now.
Oh, I can relate to that, because it's like, I mean, my account's a bit more junior in that sense, because like how you said before, I was very studious in uni. Like I was very like, look, I'm here for one purpose. As much as I love being in Budapest and everything like that, I'm here for one purpose, and that purpose is I need to graduate, I need to get this veterinary degree and keep it moving. Like that's the goal. And so it's nice to have all the distractions out there, and everything's fun, and there's so many wild times I can count back. But I'm here for a purpose, and let's not get lost in the sauce. Like, let's you know, let's keep it pushing. And so for me, I'm very academic driven, and so I was driven all the way. And I didn't have like Facebook, I didn't have Instagram at all. I didn't have personal Instagram until I think I made my Instagram in fourth or fifth year of uni. I think it was fifth year, because I only made a Facebook account at that time because a lot of our
resources.
A lot of my colleagues resources were being shared on Facebook. I was like, well, I'm just missing out now at this point. Like, before I used to get it from my friends and download it, I was like, I'm just missing out at this point because there's so much information that I need to get access to it. And then the whole idea of the Instagram thing was like, I used to talk to my vets about veterinary medicine. I used to talk to my friends about it, like just my friends from back home, and they just didn't have a clue what a vet does. It was just all this arbitrary stuff. And I was like, no, that's not what's in veterinary medicine. And so my whole thing creating my account was, again, like, it was for me, and I think it's still in my Instagram thing. I don't know, maybe I've changed it to public figure. I doubt I've done that. I don't think I'm there. But it's personal blog. You know, when Instagram allows you to choose like what your thing is, it's personal blog. And I think my first post might still be up. I don't know, maybe I might have deleted it in shame or something. But it was like, my first post was literally, I'm starting this account just to share what excites me about veterinary medicine and hope that it might just cause the same emotion in you. I feel very attached to that kind of feeling, especially when it comes into the creative sense of this feeling that something that evokes so much passion and excitement in me. Hopefully, if you see the world skewed through the lens that I see it, maybe it might evoke the same amount of passion in you, and who knows what trail it will send you in. It might just be that, you know, that match that lights and sets off a massive blaze. So I was just like, that was my whole purpose of starting my Instagram. And I think my take was just a tiny bit different in the sense of, like, I like the vet stuff, but then because I didn't have a personal Instagram, I was very like, my personal stuff's going on here too. And if you want to follow it, follow it. If you don't want to follow it, don't follow me. I'm not that fussed by it, because I'm just going to be me, because this is, for me, it's a personal blog and a personal reflection thing. You know, sometimes I might post what I'm thinking, or post what I'm reading, or you know, something that I think might actually genuinely help somebody, or a piece of something that I feel like generally motivates me, or a case that I found really interesting, or something that I wanted to share. And that's how it kind of started. And it was, you know, it was in social media, I guess, when you start, you kind of like finding your feet of what you like and what people engage with and what people respond to and sort of that sort of thing. And at that time, I was just posting everything that, like, you know, I felt like, because that was all the things that I was passionate about. Like I said, it became like, it's just a mood board of what I felt passionate about. So with my travel, I'd post my travel, and, you know, eating, I'd post what I'd eat and share. You know, I'd get up to all kinds of my stories. My stories used to be so active. Like, I used to post all sorts of my stories, like, and have so much fun and just do random, like, I used to have arguments about what goes first, like, you know, milk or the cereal in the bowl. So it was all these sorts of different things. And then I'd talk about cool veterinary cases and the stuff I'm learning from my NAVLI, and, you know, show x-rays of snake. And it just became this thing of like, okay, well, this is me, and this is how I navigate through the veterinary space, as well as navigating through life. And this is how I'm putting it together. And I want to make it public, because let it share and reach whoever it can reach, because who knows that, you know, sometimes that connection's a two-way street. Somebody might feel a certain way from your post, do something, and then they might again give something back to you. And so, like, it comes all the way around. It comes full circle. So that was what my Instagram was, in my public kind of space. And my Instagram is still that. I'm just not as active on my Instagram now. Mainly because it's kind of this balance of, I talk about a lot about self-preservation, and like, I think we're in a job where we have to be mentally fit a lot of the time, and it's mentally taxing all the time. Like, I always describe it to my friends, when people always ask me like, oh, why are you always reading about, I'm obsessed with psychology, philosophy, those kind of books, and understanding myself as well, just kind of reflecting as to what I like and what I don't like. And I always talk about, like, the example I give is, I remember one time going to work and doing my thing. It used to be like a 45-minute drive to get to work, and then I remember like not having my drink of coffee, and I was getting there for, I think, 7:30, because I started at 8 and I was operating that day. And I get there at like 7:45, and as soon as I opened the back door, the receptionist came and said, Bolu, puppy's been kicked in the head by a horse. And I was like, huh? I haven't even taken a sip of my coffee. And it just, things were all systems go straight from the day. And that's kind of like how every day is. It's just, you know, you just don't know what's going to hit you when you get through that door. And so my obsession became just being mentally fit and mentally ready. And it's kind of like, that's what my Instagram is kind of as well. It's just putting together these tools, but then also sharing. And then as the platform kind of grew and I knew it could reach more people, it then became sharing advice as well, because it was a space of, there may be veterinary professionals following me, but they also, I have to remember that I'm trying to relate to the people that aren't veterinary. That was my whole thing in the beginning, was my friends aren't veterinary. So the tips that I give them aren't, you know, we're in a position when you're getting to the doctor space, you're in a position of where you're a translator, you're the intermediary. You have to take all the big scientific jargon and be able to distill it so that everybody can understand it, because if nobody understands it, then you've not done your job.
Exactly.
You know, you can't pass, so you can't, nobody can, there's not good medicine anymore, like, you know, because if they don't understand what you're saying, how are you going to do it? So that was that kind of thing, and being that intermediary to be able to share it. And that's kind of what my Instagram is. Like, my TikTok is separate. I don't even, my TikTok isn't even promoted on my Instagram, because it was just me messing about. And then that just became, like, you know, a whole different spiel in itself. And so I have a whole TikTok account and it's almost at 100K. Like, and it's like, it's just me, like I said, just me messing about, and it's like messing about, but then also giving the veterinary experience vicariously and being able to, you know, exercise that creative lens. And yeah, the media aspect of it just grows and grows, because I generally have fun doing the media, but then it's also a way of being able to share my lens on things and how I see veterinary medicine, hoping that, who knows, maybe there's some 8-year-old kid that's maybe just as crazy as me, sitting there like, oh, that guy's kind of crazy, and he does veterinary medicine. I want to do it like how he does it. Cool, like, you know, and you know, maybe that's the reason why he wants to get into veterinary medicine, and then he'll go and smash it, like, and you know, surpass whatever I may do, like. So that's why I really wanted to get into it, like that kind of representation, that kind of breaking down what I'm doing, the skewed lens, I guess, you know.
And do you see yourself as role models? Like, are you conscious with your posting that you have influence and that you are being role models to other people? Or is that just a plus attached to everything that you're doing for yourself?
Okay, the way I see role models is that you don't make the choice. You become, you don't, people, I've heard people say, I'm not a role model. And I just feel like you can't do that. Someone makes you a role model, you become one. And so people have said to me, you know, you're an inspiration, or, you know, I'm really look up to you, I really enjoy what you just being visible, you know. And so I think by design, I'm a role model. And I guess it's not whether you're a role model, it's about whether you take the responsibility seriously or not. And that's kind of, that's how I feel about it. And I take it responsibly in the fact that if I want people to understand who I am and the kind of building blocks that make up me, I have to be able to represent that as truly as possible. So I try to find a balance where it's personal and honest, and still, you know, it's just like Bolu, it's accessible basically. So yeah, I definitely do feel I am a role model, but I guess the way that I approach it is that I want to be part of things that have a sense of weight to them. So I always try to, I'm very particular in the things that I am connected to, because you know, with this, you have to future-proof yourself. And you know, every other day there's someone who says something and it ends up somewhere, and some newspaper says this, and you know, and so the way I see it is I have to be, and me and Bolu spoke about this before, you know, like first time I reached out to him, it's just like, you know, we're both in the media and I see you doing great work, and we had a chat like ages ago, and you know, it was really, really cool to see someone else really kind of doing visible things as well. And so that's kind of how the first time we spoke, and it was really comforting in that sense. And so the way I see not just me but also Bolu and other people who are visible is that we have to if we get something wrong, we should use it as an opportunity to kind of share with each other and talk to each other and you know, and advance each other, as opposed to seeing it as a weakness.
Yeah.
And so doing things like this is a really great opportunity. But yeah, I am a role model. Do I take it seriously? Yes. But I also realize that as a role model, people don't buy into me just being a vet. I'm not just some ubiquitous, amorphous being vet. I'm Fabian the vet. You know, I'm Dreddy vet. Yeah. And so with Dreddy vet, there's more than just being a vet. There's my politics, there's my culture, there's my how stupid I am. There's the fact that, you know, all the other things are important. And so I try to reflect who I really am as safely and as considerately as possible. And I think that's such an important part of what we do. People don't buy into either of us or any of us because we are part of Animal Aspirations or because we are vets. They buy into us because we're people, we're real people, we're accessible. They enjoy the things we put out because we give it emotion as well as the kind of logic and the theory behind it. And that's, I do take that seriously.
Yeah, and that's like you said, that's human nature. That's that human nature of people buy into you because it's a relationship at the end of the day. They relate to you. You're accessible and you've shown your true self, and it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna relate to those, you know, I'm gonna relate to those traits. And that's, like you said, like you don't get to choose. You can't choose whether or not you are a role model. You kind of, like, you know, without knowing it, Fabian will be my role model, you know. You know, he'll be my role model at the same time because he's out here, he's doing things that are visible, you know. It's just that same way of, you take your role models as you are. Steve Irwin wasn't thinking of me when he was doing what he was doing. He was chasing crocodiles, you know. But I look at that guy like, yeah, you are a role model for me, you know. The way people go through their lives, when I look at particular athletes and things like that and the way they work, they weren't thinking about me when they were doing anything. They were just being as good, as best as they can. And it's that kind of thing of, somebody said, one of my friends does this in his own podcast, and he was talking about we need less role models and more real models. And it's that kind of thing of, you know, the real model, like you are a real person. And that was a big thing for me. Like, I think I put it on my Instagram once, was without getting political, but Joe Biden said it in his speech, talking about America and saying that they should not lead by the example of their power, but by the power of example. And that kind of just sticks with me because it's that kind of idea of, it's one thing telling people to do things, but it's another thing of you doing it and showing them that it's possible, that it can be done. And like, you know, I will tell you X, Y, Z, but, you know, best believe I'm gonna live by that code that I'm showing, and that's that same thing. And it's this, you get a sphere of influence when you get these things. People are going to follow you. Like, we live in a day of age where, regardless of what you say, regardless of what rhetoric you have, the way social media is designed is that there's like an echo chamber, and so people with similar interests are going to follow you, and you will become a role model, and you will become leaders, and that's the whole idea of this leader follow leader, like, you know. And so you, whether intentionally or mistakenly, you put yourself on that path as a role model. But then it's also being aware that you're in a position of influence. You can't be ignorant to the fact that you have a position of influence, regardless if you have people, because people get hung up on numbers as well of followers and stuff like that. Even if you have 10 followers, imagine if you're standing in like on Oxford Circus and you have 10 people around you listening to what you say intently. Like, that's still a really impressive crowd, you know. Even whether it's 10 people or it's 5 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, you just think about that, like 5 people in front of you just listening to exactly what you have to say. You have some responsibility there, and so it's on you, especially when you enter that social space, to be able to like accept the responsibility. And I think I want to say that, like, you know, people like us would be good at it because we're in the veterinary field where we have to accept responsibility for all our actions anyway. But, you know, you have to accept responsibility, the fact that what you're saying is affecting people, and you're responsible for your actions that you're demonstrating in there. And, you know, if you're going to lead people, that what you're saying is going out there and it's affecting people in some way. So you have to take that responsibility seriously. And I wouldn't necessarily say that I got into it to be a role model. But if somebody chooses to be a role model, you know, if somebody chooses to be a role model, like, you know, if a friend tells me that I motivate them, like, you know, I work with friends and we're accountability partners for each other. And if one day, because I pushed harder that day, it's managed to push them as well, I'm bringing you with me. You know, we're going on this together. It's not like, and nobody gets left behind. And there's days when I'm slacking, and you'll bring, it's that togetherness in it. And so as much as it is a role model space and not picking a role model, the people who choose me as their role model are role models to me. You know, they're giving me that inspiration. So it's a two-way street. It's that, oh wait, you want to be like me? Wait, I'm trying to be like you. Like, you know, so that sort of thing. You know, your diligence, your hard work, you're aspiring for something. So that sort of thing. So
I think just to follow on, it's important that when people are visible who aren't, we don't fit the most common identities that fit into veterinary medicine as well, that people don't reduce us down to being as crude as it sounds, the black vets either, you know what I mean? And I think it's very important that we show, like a Dready Vet is very clearly a very loud shout at things which are close to my cultural background, right? Having dreadlocks or locks or whatever you want to say. But actually, the whole point, it's a bit of a bait and switch, because really, once you get into Dready Vet as a social media account or as a entity or whatever, it's got nothing to do with me just talking about culture or race. I do a lot of other things too, and I think that's what's really great about both of us, is that we're having this conversation and it's not completely enshrouded in the fact that we're just race is an issue, or that we're people and we have interests, and there's a huge diversity of things that we're connected to. And you follow us and you stay following us, not because we're out in the streets necessarily, you know, holding placards at times when we need to do, which we can do, we will do, but we also, you know, we like to read books, we like to exercise, we like to do all sorts of stuff, we're really I'm normally good at table tennis, whatever it is, you know what I mean? You know, it is, you know what I mean? But that's the point, and that's the point, and that's why it's so important to have these spaces to show that we can be visible, we can be vets, and that we're not reduced down to, well, your selling point is that you're black, or your selling point is that you've got dreadlocks. Actually, we're just as, and in many cases, much more accessible, interesting, media trained, because we're people, and that's the important part, and that's very much where, you know, being a role model is important. You've got to take it from that start point and carry it forward, and you know, I think this conversation today really, you know, shows that. So, you know, I think it's great.
That kind of there's depth. There's depth at the end of the day. I guess but also, well, without getting too deep, but like, you know, like being as somebody from a BAME background, you almost have to have depth. You almost have to have that kind of background on you. You have to have all that kind of, you know, that little bit more structure. You can't be superficial. It's not on the surface level. You have to have so much more to you, and it's exactly how you say, like, you know, there's the things that people see at the forefront, they take it through. Like the first thing a lot of people will see about me is, oh, he's 6'4" and he looks athletic, and whoa, like, you know, I used to go to America, they're like, do you play sport, bro? Like, you know, you play ball? And then I'll be like, I'm a vet, and they're like, what? Huh? You know? And that sort of thing. And it's just, you know, the whole stereotype just gets chucked out the window. It's like, okay, there's so much more here, and how can I examine that? And you know, even though we're not really covering that topic, that's something as a BAME person is negotiating the world, and not necessarily proving, but demonstrating that first label that you give me is completely enough, utterly arbitrary. Like there's nothing. It means nothing. Like it means nothing. And like after reading, well, I read Superior by Angela Saini, and it's such a great book about race science and things like that. And you start to realize that, like, talking about race and talking about the color of somebody's skin, it's as arbitrary as like, you know, classifying people into groups of how long their fingernails grow. You know, like it's so like, you know, by the amount of melanin in our skin is what we're talking about classifying people, and we've built this barrier about it and separated ourselves into different sects based off of it. And it's like there's so much more. There's so much more depth to each individual person. And you know, like in that book it kind of explains how the group of black people here, we might have more in common as a group of black people here than the group of black people that might be in the West Indies, Jamaica, or, you know, and there's but we're all classified under one race.
Yeah.
So let's all be together. But you know, we're here, we have a completely different experience. And it's like, it's so arbitrary to do that kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's that kind of I've sidetracked very heavily. but you know, there's depth, there's structure.
No, I think that's an important point, and I think both of you do that so well with your Instagrams, even if it's not like intentional. You're not hesitant to show other sides of yourselves. You're like, this is something I'm interested in. It's not just you being a black vet, because that's like what people box you into, but it's like, I do this, I enjoy working out, I enjoy fitness, I enjoy, you know, doing these things with my friends. And I think also showing having a work-life balance, like showing that you can, like, it's not just about being a vet, is also really important, because I feel like so much, like as a student and then as like new grads, it's very much like the job, but like showing that you can do other things as well as being a vet, as well as being BAME. I think you both do that really well, so well done to you. My last thing that I want to ask is, do you have any like life mottos or inspirational quotes that you really like stand by, that like helps you get through things?
My mantra for day-to-day life is very much based on humanism. So the idea is that we always try to look forward, and like Bolu said earlier with the COVID situation, we're always trying to plan on things. And in reality, the future is actually not really a thing that's there. It's all based on expectation. So we see the world and we put certain key points. Well, I want this to happen, and then this will happen. It's all expectation.
Yeah. And
we always are trying, well, you know, you've got to let go of the past, it's behind you. We only need to focus on the present. And the way that I like to see it is that actually the past is the most important part, because it is the framework for all the times you've overcome something, all your achievements, and the achievements aren't necessarily attached to what someone else has done. They're completely yours.
Yeah.
You know, like things that some people would see as achievements for other people, and the way that I would see achievements may not be an achievement for someone else, and vice versa. So my mantra really is that everything from now onwards is a bonus, because I know when I look back at my life, I've personally, and not even the most obvious things, but personally had so many things I've overcome, so many moments which I've enjoyed, and so many privileges that have got me to this certain point. And so even if I was going to fall down and die tomorrow or never be a vet again, I could look back and say, look, you've done all this. And that gives me a huge amount of freedom going forward, because it means that I don't feel let down when things don't go the way I expect them to. I can still feel, you know, frustrated in the time. It doesn't stay for very long, because I still work on the day-to-day understanding that it's a bonus.
Yeah.
If you know, if I get through to tomorrow, brilliant. It's a huge bonus. And all the things that have value have happened, and everything else, you know, and so that way of approaching life has given me just so much freedom to not see the world as this needs to happen for me to feel value. This needs to happen. This needs to happen, and I work with that on a day-to-day basis. My little internal philosophy is a little bit different, but as a person, that is what motivates me, because there's no need for motivation. If I don't want to go to work tomorrow and I want to pretend I'm sick, or I want to eat Doritos all day, I can do, because it's a bonus. You know, everything's a bonus. You never see anything through a maligned vision. Everything is positive, and it's just a matter of what you'd like to do with that bonus time. That's it.
I like that.
Finger snap. Finger snap. Oh, wise one. It's hard for me. I think obviously I have my core principles and things that I will always stick to and stay true to. But like I said, like I sit down and I love to consume, like to devour books of philosophy and psychology, and I feel like it's always, I go through seasons of things that are at the forefront of my mind. So it's hard to like just pick one philosophy that I stick with. But if I were to describe in this current moment of time, the philosophy that is most present in the forefront of my mind is self-awareness and self-preservation, and the idea of just, it's not self-centered to look after yourself. We talk about self-care a lot, And as a community, a lot of people talk about self-care, but I'm talking about from a depth of, yes, there's self-care and looking after yourself, pampering yourself, doing those things at night, you take yourself out, but there's more depth to it in terms of you need to also be able to preserve yourself,
yeah,
and look after yourself and that body, because as much as you have all these futuristic goals and things that you want to achieve, if you're no more, those goals are also no more. You know, you have to be able to take what you need to do to produce the best version of yourself today. And if that means that the best version of yourself today is only 75%, then so be it. That's 75%, you know. And taking what you need to do that. So if that means that you have one less phone call a day, or it means that you're just going to sit in the dark for 10 minutes, or it means that you're going to spend 20 more minutes in the bathtub, or, you know, you're going to turn the water extra hot when you get into the shower, or you're going to eat the banana, or you're going to have a Krispy Kreme, or you're going to go to the cinema, you know, whatever it is that gives you that intentional happiness, because I think we're so warped in the world of this unintentional happiness, especially like with things like Instagram and stuff like that, the scrolling and the flicking and the liking and the consuming of all these different things, unintentional dopamine triggers that are just setting off. But the reason why I say the self-awareness and self-preservation is you have to have the awareness to be intentional about your happiness. Be intentional about what it is that makes you happy and what it is that truly gives you that dopamine. Whether it's spending that extra 10 minutes with friends and being tired in the morning, then so be it. Whether it is that kind of, okay, I'm going to sit down with my family today, you know, for that 5, I'm going to take my dog for that extra long walk because it makes me happy. I'm going to walk past the park. Then, you know what the people say, pet the cat. You know, you pet the cat when you walk past it, you know, or you stop and smell the roses because, oh, that smell really, like, you know, just being present and self-aware of intentional happiness, and also self-preserving, and, you know, being able to make sure that you can see the long haul, because, you know, you've got that one life and you want to be able to see that long haul and, you know, experience what you can. And even though, you know, the stoic in you might say memento mori, remember death, and it's coming, but you also want to be able to just enjoy what's there and preserve yourself and keep yourself there, you know, and make sure that that best version of yourself comes out today, comes out tomorrow, and whatever you need to do it, you know, do it. Bring that best version of you to the table, because that's what we're here for, you know, every day, you know, just try and bring that best version of yourself. And, you know, some days you might not be able to, but you're going to ride on the fact that you as a person, because you're self-aware, you know that you'll get through it and you'll come out the other end.
I think we more finger snaps.
Is somebody like some incense? Let's go.
Hey, that was really good. I really enjoyed both of those. I think I always like hearing what other people have as their like life mottos, because it's really interesting, like understanding someone else's perspective on things. And I think there's always something to learn from listening to how other people like deal with situations and come like bring themselves to each day. So that was really, thank you so much for that. That was really good. So that kind of brings us to the end of this session, this episode. I've really enjoyed listening to your life stories. I think it's been really like inspirational and different, and I hope other people like listening too. So I know you guys have such busy schedules, so I just want to thank you so much for like taking time out of your day to like chat with us, me in this setting.
Thank you so much for having us. Like, I mean, I've enjoyed listening to Fabian. Like, can listen all day.
But no, it's been great. It's you know what? It's nice. It's nice to have friends and know that we all can can meet in a kind of off-brand setting and just sit down and talk. And you know, it's been really, really positive. And thank you so much. But thank you more importantly for doing it. You know, I hope that these conversations are going to be, you know, have a nice broad spectrum and all the more power for you for doing it. So thank you.
Oh
yeah, and thank you to whoever's listening right now.
Yeah, thank you. Listeners talk shit for how many hours or minutes?
Like an hour and a half.
Yeah, whoever made it this far, good on you. Like, this is the bonus round.
Our followers are gonna drop straight away and be like, these guys, man.
Why do people cancel them immediately? Let's talk about cancel culture. Cancel them immediately.
I hope you enjoyed this episode speaking to Bolu and Fabian. Hearing them speak about their experience studying abroad was really interesting, as a pathway different from what is talked about in schools. I hope that from listening to their experience as a new grad and being in practice gave you some comfort if you are going through it now, or some insight into what is yet to come. If you want to keep in touch with them, then give them a follow on social media at Bolu Esu and at Dreadyvet. And while you're there, don't forget to follow at Animal Aspirations. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Animal Aspirations podcast, and we'll see you next time.